TNKR Media.
If you're a white guy from Ontario, cook that. Don't cook Chinese food. It's weird.
Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Salt Lake Podcast. I'm Lesley Chesterman. I'm here with my co-host, my equally sweaty co-host, David McMillan. Hi, David.
Hi, Lesley. How are you?
I'm hot. We're hot and sweaty. It's in the middle of what the French call a canicule, or a heat wave here in France. And when I left Montreal, it was another heat wave. So canicule.
That's a weird word.
Canicule, yeah. It's la canicule. And it's hot, and it was when I left Montreal. It was hot. I get here. It's hot. I was in the Okanagan last week. It was hot. It's a hot summer.
Is this the period of time in France where everyone's on vacation?
Absolutely, August. So, but I'm in a part of France in northern Burgundy where there are not a lot of tourists. So there are a lot of cows. Not a lot of vines. There are a lot of cows. So what's new with you this week, David? How's the vineyard going? You just told me before we got going that you're hot there too.
And we even had that. I didn't even think this was a thing that would ever happen here, but we even had a little bit of sunburn damage on a row of the grapes. I guess I got here a little bit late, and the Ukrainians showed up and started pulling leaves on a row of Chardonnay on the south side, and we had a little bit of burn to the leaves at first. Emerson sent me a picture, and I thought it was some kind of mildew or rot. I quickly sent it over to Zach from Lespiègle, and he said, that's sunburn. Go stop de-leafing immediately. So, we've had a little bit of...
Does that ruin the grapes, or what's the effect?
Well, it's not much. It's like, maybe on 20 bunches of grapes. So basically what happens is, they're protected by the leaves. And then at this time of year, we kind of remove some leaves. But in intense heat and intense sun, like a human without a shirt on or without a hat on, if you do this gradually in cold weather and then, in non-intense heat, the grapes kind of adapt over a couple of days. But if it's midday sun and we just removed leaves that were protecting them, they go from 0 to 100 basically. So they burn a little bit. So we had a little bit of that happen. We're also, my vineyard's up on this shale kind of limestone hill, and the topsoil is very shallow. So my vineyard drains really well when it rains, so that's a plus. But I guess in this temperature, and I never thought that I'd have to even worry or think about this. But I do feel like there's some what they call hydrate pressure, somewhat. Not that we're not anywhere near watering the vineyard, which is quite an endeavor. But I've noticed a lot of my friends in Prince Edward County are having to water the vineyard. County got little or to no rain, like May, June, July. When I was there a month ago, when I cooked an event at the Grange Winery, it was shocking how dry the county was. Like all the grass everywhere was brown, right? There's no weed growth because the weeds were dead, right? When now I'm starting to experience a little bit of brown grass, which is a little bit concerning. Even the garden seems to have stumped down a little bit or settled or stopped being vigorous, which is kind of normal. But it's strange. It's very strange. I don't recall many droughts in my short agricultural life. Maybe when we planted the vineyard many years ago, like 5 years ago, when we planted this vineyard, there was a little bit of drought going on back then, and we had to water because the vines were young and they have very little leaves, so that was a problem. But I didn't think that I'd have to look at that issue again now that the vines are massive and big and bushy. It's concerning a little bit, but we'll get through it.
That when I was in the Okanagan a couple of weeks ago, a winemaker was saying that when it got really hot there a few years ago, the vines actually dropped the grapes. I'd never heard that before.
The vines will drop the grapes because that's That's what
The
they're,
mechanism, survival.
yeah, somewhat. And they'll drop leaves as well. I have a hybrid row of a hybrid called Adelmina in my hybrid vineyard, and I noticed that the leaves turn upside down somewhat. So it's not all the vines are like that. Just that varietal has basically turned its leaves around. It's very strange.
But are they turning them around to protect the grapes, or are they turning them around to expose the grapes?
I think they're turning the leaves around to protect the leaf. I
The
don't mean
leaf.
it's a weird hybrid because the underside of the Adelmina leaf is kind of like fuzzy. You know, it looks like a little bit like cotton a little bit on the bottom of the leaf. So maybe it turns the leaf around to use that cotton that it has to protect the other side of the leaf. I don't know. I'd have to read more about it. It's not really a grape that I pay so much attention to.
Because you don't pay attention to it, that it's doing that to get your attention.
There you
Like
go.
David doesn't pay attention to us, so there you go. I was in Chablis yesterday and I couldn't see any grapes on the vines. So we're up in a Grand Cru vineyard and I couldn't see any of the grapes. I'm like, there are no grapes here. But I think actually they leave on so many leaves that I couldn't see the grapes because they didn't remove so many leaves. And then when
Yeah.
I'd see the grapes, a lot of the grapes weren't even. Like they'd be big berry, little berry, big. That's the first time I've seen such inconsistent cluster shapes.
Interesting. That happens sometimes where you have inconsistent grape size. There's a word for it. I forget. I notice it once in a while here and there. And yeah, sometimes, especially vigneron, if they predict an extremely hot thing, they won't pull leaves so much. I don't see much like leaf pulling really generally in Burgundy as such, but I know people do. But it's normal to drive by a vineyard and not notice the grapes because they're well hidden by the leaves. I have some varietals that I don't leaf pull on just because I know that they ripen early, and so I just choose just to leave the leaves on certain grapes like Ehrenfelser, Sauvignon, and this other grape I have called Optima. I don't pull any leaves on those. I just pull leaves on Chardonnay and Pinot Noir basically.
It's funny because years ago I was in the Roussillon at the I think I was there at the end, like right before the vendange, and they're not allowed to irrigate, right? There are a
Well,
lot of
no,
these
they're not allowed to irrigate in
appellations in
France.
They're not allowed to irrigate. So we're standing there in this vineyard that was kind of 90% dead. Like, and we were talking to the woman and she's like, we're just absolutely not allowed to irrigate. It's amazing that they have these laws that are so detrimental to the winemakers, like I thought, what's she going to do? I don't. And she said, no, we just can't. And then when I was in the Okanagan, they even have high sprayers, which is, if you look in garden centers and stuff, they would have they're spraying from above when actually for what I was told later from vines, you should only water from below. Like a lot of them will irrigate in the ground more. But, they were even doing this top irrigation. But it's amazing that they're not allowed to irrigate. I wonder with the climate getting so hot, are they going to start? A lot of them are talking about maybe planting other grapes. When I was in Burgundy a few years ago, there was a woman who said, we're experimenting with Syrah in our vineyard. So there are so many problems that arise, but not even being allowed to water is crazy. I understand why, but still, like, ooh, imagine if you couldn't water.
Well, it's very hard for us to water to start, right? I'd need basically to hook up a hay wagon to the back of the tractor or a giant water bin, like a 1-ton tote, what they call, and then believe it's to water one vine, it's 2 kilograms of water. Right. If you're going to actually do anything, if it's going to do anything, it's quite a pretty good. So, but then you see, like, I would basically just to spray a quarter of my vineyard, I would basically drain my whole pond. And like, unless you have like a ready source of water near you that's unlimited, it'd be quite difficult to water a vineyard from your well or your pond, right? And I know that in Ontario, some winemakers, up in the wine area there in Hillier, are basically taking tractor wagons down to Lake Ontario and pumping water into their totes and then driving back. It's quite a distance. I'd say 7 kilometers or something, but 7 kilometers in a tractor is like a nightmare. And then spraying, watering with Lake Ontario water, because no well, can handle, 2 tons of water being taken out of it, especially during a drought, right? My well, even I have a great well at the farm, but, and I'm lucky to have a good well, but, I wouldn't, during this time of year where there's a drought, I would be very concerned about, pulling 1,000 or 2,000 or 4,000 liters of water out of my well at this time of year. It's like very, very difficult. But, I'll say this, you shouldn't water vines. I don't super believe in it.
You shouldn't have to, or?
No, you shouldn't. Like you should, it happens that you're going to go through these droughts and all that, but and I understand that the appellation, God, you imagine if everyone in Burgundy was allowed to water their vineyards. It's an ocean of water. There's just so many vines there. It would deplete every water source. And where vines are planted generally are in not great farmland. Burgundy is interesting when you think about Burgundy. Like the number one business of Burgundy is wine. Right? That's what they do. Burgundy is known for wine. But when you look at the Jura, the number one business that they do in the Jura is milk, cheese, dairy cattle, right? So that, the grapes are...
Comté.
Well, it's funny. Why there's a high propensity of organic farming in the Jura is kind of due in relationship to the cheese, the milk. The Comté is a worldwide product. There's a few worldwide products, and I like to think about them. Like Tabasco sauce is a worldwide product. Parmesan cheese is a worldwide product. Angostura bitters you'll find in every bar on earth. Comté, we can say now, is a worldwide product. New Zealand lamb, frozen New Zealand lamb is a worldwide product. So when you have this worldwide product coming out of the Jura, the cheesemakers and the milk board sets the rules, right? So the vineyards are up in the hills, but the good farmland where all the cows are is basically in the valley, but beneath the vines. So if any weird residual chemical from viticulture would end up in the water or the grass, or they found trace amounts of in the milk, the milk lobby wins over the wine lobby. So right. That's why, there's been a lot of very ethical farming in the Jura for longer than there has been in Burgundy.
There's another issue too in France, which I wasn't aware how bad it was, but they, from what I'm told, from Lyon down, are in a massive water shortage. I was looking at all of these. I'm always looking at these French houses to buy in my so-called retirement, which I will never experience. But so I'm always looking at these houses. And my brother-in-law sits next to me. He's like, don't even look at any houses below Lyon because there's no water. There's no water. Like these people with swimming pools, he said they're not allowed to fill them up. There's such a drastic water shortage. So even when you're talking about watering in Burgundy, imagine watering like we're in the Roussillon or the Languedoc or all these areas where you were just discussing before we started. There are even these massive forest fires in France. So it's, is it climate change? Is it this? Is it that? They probably experienced a lot of these things before, but it's just getting harder and harder to make these products faced with so many challenges, including the climate, for sure. I mean, you have a lot of challenges as a winemaker. What if after all of this heat, you get 3 weeks of rain? I shouldn't say that because you don't want to hear, you know what I mean? But like, you can control a lot of things, but you can't control that.
100%. Right. It's but that's the joy.
That's the name of the game.
Yeah. It's the joy of farming. The season started off with so much rain, right? That I I was almost throwing the towel in June, right? It was like raining every third day, and you can't stay on top of your antifungal spraying during that time, right? You basically spray the vineyard and it rains, and then you spray the vineyard again and it rains, so I was like, that we're done. I could see the mildew, powdery mildew. I could see the black rot starting. I could see I just see like so many issues so early on, and the grape clusters had barely even formed yet. Like we were fighting mildew at flowering, right? Which sucks, right? And I spent an inordinate amount of time on the tractor during the early summer, and now it's great. The vineyard looks fantastic. You know what? And the dry heat and all that, it's great because it's so anti-disease, right? That's why there's such a high propensity of organic wine in Spain, right? It's just like it's super easy to be organic in Spain, right?
Or what I heard in also Osayos or in Okanagan, that it's very easy to be organic there because of the climate. And yet a lot of times when I'm visiting a vineyard, I'm asking them, hey, you guys are organic? They're like, no, we don't like to, we want to keep the door open if anything goes wrong. That's the line I always hear. We want to keep the door open. Like, okay.
Yeah. I see that,
You understand the door open.
I understand the door open. Like I can see, only because the organic certification is a little bit of a racket, to be honest. Like I could go on about that. I understand it's a good thing, and I just don't believe in the actual service so much, right? I want my fruit to be, organic, but I don't believe that the certification and the way that it's managed is super legit, right?
Yeah. I know also, to get a little bit off the wine topic, but still talk about the summer, what you've been up to when you're not on your tractor. I know you went to Maine. And
I love Maine so much. You know what? I'm going back as well. I'm going to go back with my daughters were so sad because I was in Maine with Flynn and Andy, and my daughters had summer camp and this and that. And my little Cece, my last daughter, was like, "Oh, Dad, I miss you so much. I wish we could go to Maine too." And she had like their eyes swelled with water, and I was just like, "Oh God, here we go." So I just booked another few days.
What do you do when you go to Maine? Did you have a routine, don't you? Whenever you go, where you stay, what you do?
Yeah, like I enjoy the beach. Like I didn't know how to enjoy the beach before. My ex-wife showed me how to enjoy the beach, so now I understand. I never kind of knew, like I always thought if I go to Maine, I have to go to a museum, I have to go visit this beer place, I have to go antiquing, right? I have to go, and now I just, I have my beach chairs in the back of my pickup truck. I have a little parasol with the screw thing. I have my bass, my striper, my big rig fishing rod. I have a kite. I have frisbees. Like I have all this stuff. So basically, I wake up, have coffee, and walk to the beach. And I set up, and I'll bring a book. I'll listen to music in my earphones. Don't bring your dumb speakers to the beach. God, what's wrong with people and speakers on the beach? It's like it's crazy.
People used to do that. They bring a huge ghetto blaster to the beach and play, Fleetwood Mac on a loop.
In Miami, it's crazy. Like you have 10 people within near you and 10 speakers. It's a lot of Latino, what they call, I hear a lot of reggaeton is popular there. J Balvin and this stuff like that, which I don't really understand so much. But yeah, they do love the Latin beats in Miami.
Did you go out for lobster?
Yeah, but let me finish.
Oh, sorry.
So we just spend the day at the beach. Like, we'll do the fly, we'll fly the kite. We'll go swimming. We experience the high tide, but then we'll experience as well the low tide. I'll go show the kids how to find clams, how to find crabs. I can identify the different little siphon holes and show them where where the big surf clams would be. I always try to catch a couple of crabs, and it's fun. Like I really like it. We spend the whole day there and doing that stuff, and then around 3 we start talking about what restaurant to eat at. And, it's pretty much always the same thing. Like we eat an Ogunquit lobster pound. I love Barnacle Billy's, the old one and the new one. Um, I love the Levitt Theater. There's this amazing place in Ogunquit. It's called the Levitt Theater. And there's a cute little restaurant cocktail bar there. And they have like free movies. Like you can go watch Beetlejuice and stuff like that. It's like really cool. So we do that and go to bed early and do it again and again and again, right? But we don't hit really any fine dining whatsoever.
Is there a lot of fine dining there? There used to be
yeah, but it's kind of cheesy a little bit. I like it's either too fine and like, and I'm just not. I don't bring a wardrobe like that. I did find a restaurant that I kind of like. It's called the Lost Fire in Kennebunkport. It's like an Argentinian grill. It's pretty neat. I had a memorable steak there last time, and it was fantastic. And I just love to look at the architecture there. I love the old Kennebunk style houses and all that stuff. But my favorite restaurant, one of the most memorable restaurants of my life, and a restaurant that basically made me change everything about the way that I was cooking. It was a shocking restaurant to me, and still to this day, it's quite like a special place. I hold it in a very high regard. Was 4th Street in Portland, Maine, and the cooking of Sam Hayward, who is probably an old man now, but he's still very relevant. And I like Portland a lot as a city, but his restaurant there, 4th Street, was just shocking to me when I first saw it. I didn't understand a whole bunch of stuff about it. Right when you walk in, it's got this really cozy bar to the right, old leather chairs and some good paintings, some good old black paintings of, I don't know, rich women of Cape Porpoise, and stuff like that. And they have the cedar lined walk-in fridge right near the hostess station. So you can see this beautifully curated walk-in fridge that's not like the white plastic of every other walk-in fridge. It's like this beautiful cold room, and they have all their vegetables and stuff all assembled in there, mushrooms and so on. It's really cool to see all the produce like that when you walk in. And then what shocked me is there's this huge open kitchen that he has, but like there's not one piece of like commercial equipment. I think 6-burner stove, a deep fryer. The 6-burner stove is looks exactly the same in 2025 as it did in 1952. Right? It's oddly a piece of technology in the kitchens that's evolved very little if you think about it. Right? The same. A deep fryer is a completely flawed, dumb machine that's had no evolution. Like there's been no evolution in kitchen equipment in my career, but we have cars that can drive you around now. But yet a 6-burner stove and a deep fryer is absolute trash.
Induction is popular in a lot of but it's not in a lot of big commercial restaurants. So I just wonder.
Not very little. It'll be like there'll be one induction burner in the pastry section kind of thing.
Right. I want to know in Maine if you noticed fewer Quebecers around you or fewer Canadians around you.
Yeah, there's none. It was great. Just to give you an example, I said I've been going to Maine for my whole life, but there's a candy store in Ogunquit that the kids like to go to, and generally it's like, okay, right, it's hard to find parking. In Ogunquit, it's been hard for a decade, for a long time, and I found a parking spot in front of the candy store, and I was going, this is not good, this is not good. And 2 nights in a row, I could park in the village after 6 p.m. like on a Thursday. I was like, that just tells you how little people are going. And even the beaches were not crowded. I hate to say it. Yes, it sucks for the business people of Maine and vacation land Maine. It sucks badly. I feel it for them. But I loved it, The beach was not crowded. The restaurants were not crowded. You could park. There's not this weird traffic jam between Wells and Ogunquit that there usually is. And, it was kind of neat.
I think no matter where you travel, you will always find people from Quebec. I was in Venice. I'm on the terrace of this hotel dining room, surrounded by Americans, the couple right next to me were from like Chablis or something. I just thought this is incredible. I always run into Quebecers whenever I travel.
That's
Vancouver,
funny.
full of them, full of them. But a lot of them moved there, so that's different. But it's funny because it is terrible for the people who own stores for sure. The business is terrible that they lost, but maybe people don't realize who are from outside of Quebec listening to this, but Maine and Quebec have a very long lasting, deep relationship, as in I know so many people from Quebec who every single summer of their lives just would go to Maine, and now they're not. That's so it's kind of likewise too. It goes both ways, but you decide to go. I've been to the States twice since all these things happened, and it's kind of a choice. I went for work reasons more than personal reasons, but it's quite amazing to me
I will
that
never let government affect my
decisions.
anything. Right, exactly. Right. I'm my own guy, and I like to go where I like to go, and I couldn't care less what the narrative is coming out of the media about it. Like, just say what you want about me, but like it's like I even feel the boycotting of American wine. That's idiotic. Okay, like American wine is made by American farmers, and they're not our enemies; they're our friends. Okay, so the people upstairs, the politicians in power, decided to make a bunch of dumb decisions. I get it, but you punishing farmers is ridiculous.
Well, you could also say the American government is punishing our workers who are not going to be able to sell their goods to the States because of tariffs. So as much as we're punishing the American winemakers by not buying their goods,
Yeah, sure. There's an argument to be made, but
which could have really opened a door, like you said before, we said in a podcast before, to really start filling up those shelves because when I was in the Okanagan, there was not one wine, not one that I tasted that was on the SAQ shelves. And a lot of the regular ones that I'd seen before are not there either. There's no Tantalus, there's no Quail Skate. But of course, they did lose all of their grapes in 2024. So there's a reason for that. But, I just think also, I'm for the boycott in the States totally, but I also think why not take advantage of that to fill up those, you've talked about this yourself, fill up those shelves.
well, they're not doing anything. They're still they've had a lot of time now to actually place purchase orders of Canadian wine, and I know for a fact that the buyers aren't even pursuing it. Right, there's an amount of wine in Prince Edward County that could be available for Quebec. I pitched it to 3 or 4 agents, which called the buyer at the SAQ, and he says, we're not looking at buying any Canadian wine right now. I was like, wow, that's unbelievable.
Because people want Canadian wine too. It's not like there's not a market for it.
And I could have got this really great Chardonnay and Pinot Noir basically landed at the SAQ specialty for almost $23-24 a bottle, which is actually a great deal. And I don't know what's going on. Even interprovincially, right? We're still not seeing much going on, right? I've not noticed at the grocery store any cheese from BC or Ontario on the shelves or anything such as that. I spend time in Vermont. I do my groceries there still, not everything, but some stuff. And I'm still shocked that I had again, maybe I should read more about this, but I don't understand why Quebec cheese is so expensive. I just don't understand what the hell is going on. Again, I bought 1.3 kilogram block of extra sharp Vermont milk Cabot's cheddar, which there is just like a regular good cheddar, but it sells for $11 US for 1.3 kilos, right? So even when I do the conversion, let's say it's $20 Canadian for 1.3 kilos. Right now in Montreal, I'm spending $18 to $20 on 375 grams of sharp cheddar, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to sound like a guy who's complaining about the price of food and stuff like that, but it is quite something.
But David, you're absolutely right about cheese, because I actually buy so little Quebec cheese, and I love Quebec cheese. But when I'm standing there at the supermarket, I see a piece of $10 cheese, $14 cheese that's not even big, and I'm like, I put it down. And if I'm not buying Quebec cheese because who's buying? Of course, tons of people are buying it, but we're all complaining it's too expensive. So I think we have to do a cheese deep dive one week on the podcast.
Yeah, let's get a cheesemaker on and let's debunk Maybe I can even get a milk farmer on, and let's figure out what this pricing is. Where's this money going, and why is it so expensive, and who's getting rich off it? It's infuriating.
I know a few things, but I'd rather we have a cheese expert on to talk about milk quotas. And, I understand artisanal goods should be more expensive, but when it comes to the point that people can't afford to buy what you're making, also, there are cheesemakers, good people who are going out of business or are deciding to close down. So that's a good, we'll go deep. We'll find
All
out
right.
about that one. Yeah. But I mean, price is something that has always been very sensitive to talk about in the food world. And when I started as a restaurant critic, I actually had my bosses take me out for lunch to tell me to please stop mentioning prices in restaurant reviews. And their idea was if people want to pay that much to go out to eat, they don't care how much they're spending. And I said, if I can't mention price in restaurant reviews, find yourself another restaurant reviewers. I said, because back then, I remember saying, this was a long time ago. I said, if the veal chop is $45, like today, a veal chop would be $75, a good one, then I think people should know if it's worth that kind of money. And they looked at me, and of course, they kept me on, and I kept talking about price. But, here in France, it's very interesting to go out to eat compared to Montreal because, I went to a restaurant yesterday and their tasting menu is 150 euros. This is not a Michelin starred restaurant. This is a restaurant in Chablis. Very, very good. 150 euros. The wines are cheaper, but still not cheap. You're in Chablis, so the wines are going to be expensive no matter what. The bill, $500 for four. I went to a restaurant in Montreal the day before I left, $500 for two. And so when you're getting these $500 restaurant bills, you start to say to yourself, maybe I should just stay at home and have a sandwich. I don't want to sound like a complainer.
Yeah, well, $500 buys you a hell of a lot of groceries, right?
I don't want to sound like you just said, like a complainer about prices, but it's something that stuck with me all my life. And I really get stuck up on prices. And after a $500 dinner for two in a restaurant, I really appreciate all the work that goes into it. I appreciate that the wines came from far. I appreciate everybody in a restaurant has to get a good salary. But like you said, the amount of groceries you can get for $500, that's almost a month of groceries for some people.
When you go to do your groceries, let's say at a real butcher, which is hard to find, but like I go to Sammy Fruits and Dollard des Ormeaux, and there's a butcher. There's two butchers there. There's more like an Arab butcher called Le Roi de la Merguez or something like that. But you have really nice cuts of lamb and halal chickens and so forth, and Cornish hens and yada yada, and real veal, which is starting to be increasingly hard to find. For $500 at Sammy Fruits, I think I could fill like 7 whole wagons of fruits of it. It's ridiculous, right? Whereas your dollar goes a lot further at a real butcher, and let's say a large fruits and vegetables wholesale retailer. It's pretty neat. I can buy 12 lemons for $1.99, right? And the other day at Metro, it was 4 lemons for $10. So, there's something wrong somewhere,
But even we talked about this, even when you had the restaurant, you said you start off cheap and then the ventilation system breaks down and then you've got to give one of your...
So big grocery, you're paying the union fees, you're paying real salaries, probably expensive build outs and so on and so on. I get it, right? And infrastructure in the office, marketing, so on. And big grocery is quite competitive in the province of Quebec, from what I understand. I've had conversations with big grocers. He said there may be too many grocery stores. It's actually a thing, so they have to really hustle.
But fine dining, too, has become... if you look at these big restaurants like Trois Gros and all this in France, because I kind of looked at a lot of places before I came here saying, okay, whenever I come here, I always say, okay, there'll be that one treat restaurant, right? But like, forget it. I don't, 500 euros for a tasting menu at Trois Gros, I think. And I'm thinking, wow, this is really turning into, I remember Rene Redzepi saying years ago on some kind of, it wasn't podcast time, interview, he said, food is just going to go into 2 directions. Very casual food, not expensive, and fine dining. And the whole middle ground is going to fall out. And you actually see that happening completely. And there was another thing that I saw, which I sent to you, which is a clip of
I
the.
sent it to you as well,
Oh,
of Margot
at the same
Henderson.
time? Yeah. So
Yeah.
tell her what this. Explain to everybody what she said.
Well, I've talked about this before, and I love Margot very much. I just saw her in November.
Fergus
Um,
Henderson's wife, who owns Rochelle
yeah,
Canteen, right?
yes, and she basically makes a point where the days of Elizabeth David dining in these very delicious traditional restaurants of, let's say, Chablis or any given town in France are gone and very difficult to find. It's very difficult in Burgundy to find a traditional Burgundian restaurant where it's not tasting menu, it's none of this, like basically 6 appetizers of Burgundian tradition and 6 main courses of Burgundian tradition. It's almost impossible to find that. And she makes a point where she blames that on the Michelin guide somewhat, right? The Michelin guide has kind of reshaped what a restaurant should serve, how it should serve it. Amuse-bouche, multi-course, luxury, linens, this like homogenized world excellence elite brand of dining, which sometimes, can gut the countryside. Like when you're in the Jura, it's basically impossible to find a good restaurant that makes Jura food, right? It's impossible. Now, she makes another point. That people are eating well and cooking well because the markets are good and the product is amazing in the grocery stores. When you go to a grocery store in France, you're like, wow, look at this section, look at this chicken, look at this. So we know that the product exists. We know that there's this beautiful food being cooked, possibly in people's private homes, but restaurants are either low end bad to super elite Michelin, whatever that Frankenstein now of a restaurant that the Michelin guide has made restaurants become. You see what I'm saying? I used to work in a little restaurant in Auxerre near Meursault, and it's beautiful. It was the only business in town that wasn't a winemaker. And we served jambon persillé, parsleyed ham. We served snails 6 or 12. We served canard au vin rouge. We served, beef bourguignon. We served charolais beef, with butter and parsley, and we served all these Burgundian traditional foods. Even the dessert, the la coupe bourguignon de pear cooked in red wine with the cassis and ice cream, delicious. And when I went back 10 years later, they had a whiteboard in the restaurant that you buy from Bureau en Gros or the Office Depot. And in yellow and blue marker, it said hamburger, Américain. They had nachos. I was just like, oh my God, how did this happen? This place was so amazing.
She said something else that really hit me in that little interview clip, which we will post on our Instagram page, was worth seeing. That she said this little line that came out when she said, "And if you don't have a Michelin star, you're nobody." Do you remember she said that? She said, "All these people trying to get a Michelin star, and if you don't get a Michelin star, you're like, what does that mean?" Or she said something like that, and it really sucked to me because in Montreal we just got the Michelin star system introduced to our city, and only 3 restaurants got a star, and otherwise all these people got a recommended, and then a lot of really good restaurants didn't get a recommended. And I thought, if they're not getting a star, they're pissed off. But if you're not getting a recommended, and I went to a great little restaurant last week called Alma. And at the end of the night, I was talking to one of the 2 owners, a wonderful couple, Juan and Lindsay. And I had no idea because I just didn't remember. She told me they didn't even get a recommended. And I'm like, what? I had just a perfect meal there and not even recommended. And yesterday when I was in Chablis, I went to this famous restaurant called Au Fil du Zinc, and they don't even have a Michelin star. So it's excellent. It's amazing. But I'm thinking, all these people, even if you're aiming for a Michelin star and you don't, And I already see the effect in Montreal. I already see people who are, this wasn't a topic before, and within months, this has become a big deal. That people feeling who's relevant, who's not relevant, blah, blah, blah.
Well, it's felt about, that Les Caves Madeleine. I think I sent you there last time
Ugh,
you were in France. I told you to go eat
absolutely.
there. That for me is like the perfect restaurant. It
Agreed.
can't get more perfect for me. My idea of like dying of a massive heart attack, having a meal in a restaurant is there, right? That's like the perfect restaurant for me. And it doesn't have a Michelin star, which is like kind of shockingly mind blowing to me because that's the best restaurant. Like I prefer that restaurant to um, any restaurant in Montreal and any restaurant in New York City and any restaurant in Canada, Les Caves Madeleine,
So agree.
La Cave Madeleine, I guess. And, you know, but it is what it is. And, those guys are cool. They don't care. They'd like to have one, but they're not going to change anything that they're doing. I can see how, they have one for people that have never been there. If you could just Google it, you'll see there's generally, I think there's like 3 tables of 2. And then there's this one large communal table. So you could be 4, and then at one end of the table, and then 6 inches further they'll put a 2, and 6 inches further they'll put another 2. But basically that table sits about 20 people, I figure, 24 people. So I could see how that table might be the reason, that the inspectors aren't down with sitting with the unwashed plebs of Burgundy. But sitting at that table, I've met amazing cyclists from New York City. I've met plastic surgeons from San Francisco. I've met architects from Spain. And some of the most memorable. And then by the end of the meal, we're all drinking out of each other's bottles. And it's a wonderful, one of the greatest convivial restaurant experiences that I've ever had. And, I've eaten there 4 times, and each of the times was more special than the last. Very, very special.
Yeah, I agree. And I see it. I saw it in Quebec City when I ate at restaurants like Le Clan, no Michelin star recommended, but everybody putting their heart into it. And it just gets back to what she said in that clip of who are you if you don't have a Michelin star? And I thought, oh, fuck that. But I guess it goes along the time, even with restaurant reviewing. Who are you if you got a bad review? Who are you if you blah, 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 if you don't have people writing about you all the time? That restaurants have become a little bit of a who are you? When people come to now, where should I go eat? It's the same thing. Like, who matters? That's a big part of the restaurant industry.
When I left the restaurant industry, for many reasons, but one of the things that I kept on telling myself in my head or dreaming about was like, I want to become a man who doesn't care about wine or restaurants, right? And I think I don't really care, I look at my dad, like my dad knows nothing about wine, but also doesn't care, right? He's fine. If there's a glass of red wine, he'll drink it and have no thoughts or, take it apart or hyper analyze it, let's say, like I do. And the same thing when it comes to food, like enjoy. This was a nice meal, right? I wanted to become that person again, right? To stop like, overanalyzing art, music, food, wine, restaurants, and just become, more simple. Is that crazy? Does that sound nuts?
Well,
life is easier because of that.
I know exactly what you mean, but it's funny because when I got to France, I had to drive from Paris to Burgundy, and we were falling asleep while we were driving. So I turned on the French radio, which is one of the great treats of life, is listening to French radio. And they actually had a full 2-hour show where they play three pieces of classical music, and they have a panel of 4 people criticizing the piece of classical music, right? And in France, they do not hold back. They're like, this player is terrible. This orchestra is so cliched. It was 2 hours straight of these 3 musicians pulverizing it. I just thought, I actually really enjoyed it. I'm like, they do not hold back. I don't think I'd want to live that in 24/7, but the critic in me is like, wow, they're really using harsh terms to describe the playing of this poor pianist. Here it's a game that they play. It was fun.
I'm gonna.
But I think I think when it comes back to restaurants is that we have to be careful about putting too much emphasis when it comes to restaurants on Michelin altogether, because there are a lot of places out there that aren't playing by those rules that are fantastic, be it a communal
Yeah, well,
table or
I've
anything.
said I ask people, how can I say, when I go to Paris, I don't like I avoid all Michelin star
Yep.
restaurants. Like I know, like I ask friends, like, hey, where should I eat when I'm in Paris? And then I always add no Michelin.
Yep.
Right, that's what I want. Yeah,
A lot of people say that to me too. Where should I
is
eat?
that
No,
your rooster or mine?
that's not my
Yep.
rooster.
Okay.
Yeah.
I want to give you a tip,
Yep.
and for the listeners as well. So there's an app that I have on my phone, on my iPhone. You can download it in the App Store. It's called Radio Garden.
Hmm.
Okay. So when you go into Radio Garden, it's like Google Earth. You'll see the planet Earth. Okay. And you can move the planet with your finger, and little green dots of every radio station on the planet are there. So you can zoom in to the town you're in Chablis, and it'll identify the 4 or 5 radio stations that you can listen to. I listen to radio from Japan, from Serbia, Serbia, from Italy. Like I'm always on it. I love this app, Radio Garden. Check it out; it's really cool.
So I can listen to the critics that I enjoy on France Musique, which is the station.
You can listen to
In
it in
my
the
own.
comfort of your Montreal living room.
Oh, wow. I
I
thought
listen to the music from Scotland and Aberdeen and all these places. Super cool.
imagine if you did that with restaurants. You had 3 critics on the radio. They all went to eat, at Joe Beef or something. And one of them is like, "Oh, it was so great." The second's like, "That steak was too tough." The other was like, "Are you kidding me?" The way you could do it for anything. You could really, the whole radio
Yeah.
station just to people criticizing and shitting on everybody constantly. I want to, because I'm in Chablis, as you just mentioned, I think the first time, and I'm serious, I think one of the first times I ever really drank Chablis was at your bar at Liverpool House, because I remember you really had a true love for Chablis. So I want you to talk a little bit about why you love Chablis.
It was kind of one of the first regions that I studied, but it was easy to understand because basically it's Chardonnay and there's a little bit of Sauvignon Blanc out of a smaller appellation called Saint-Brie near there. And it was kind of one of the first places that I, when I was basically still a teen, where I studied the notion of terroir, right? When there's Chablis, regular Chablis, it come from anywhere in Chablis. But then the Premier Crus, like Montée de Tonnerre, and all these things, and I just became fascinated by terroir first with Chablis because the winemaking style is fairly clean and not marked by wood so much. So it allows you to explore the wines of Chablis according to the different areas and vineyards that are there, but basically to understand what soil tastes like, Oxfordian soil or Portlandian soil or all of these Kimmeridgian soil, which are all present there in Chablis. So you kind of get to hone your skills a little bit. It's tasting Chardonnay there the best. Where you look at, let's say, another appellation in Burgundy, Côte de Beaune. Let's talk about Beaune proper, right? It's a great appellation, big appellation, lots of Beaune, white and red, Premier Cru, no Grand Cru in Beaune, but it's harder to hone your skills at tasting because the wines are going to vary pretty much by the winemaker who makes them. So let's say you have Beaune Premier Cru, Les Aigros. If there's 3 or 4 or 10 families making Les Aigros, one will be kind of nothing great. And let's say the 2 greater ones, one might be very marked by wood, right? And then one might be lesser marked by wood. So it's hard to get an idea of what Bon Les Aigros should kind of taste like without having to taste all the producers. Whereas you can, through the years of tasting Chablis, you can get somewhere understanding what Montée de Tonnerre tastes like, what Chablis Montmain tastes like, what Valmeur tastes like, or even, the Grand Cru Le Clos, or, you can kind of, I don't know, get better at tasting wine if you stick to a region and become an expert at that region. Some of the greatest wine tasters I've ever met are in Burgundy, and they don't really even understand the wines of Côte de Nuit, which is north of Beaune. They're experts at, Côte de Beaune wineries. They know everything and how everything should taste, but they know nothing about the Rhone. They know nothing about Muscadet. They know nothing about the Jura, but they're experts at their region, right? Which is interesting to me. Like, it's okay to just be an expert at Chablis.
You could almost say that also about a cook. I don't know how good somebody can be a cook of French food, Italian food, and Chinese food. Like how many cooks can really go beyond their basic, I don't want to say knowledge, but their training, their experience. I mean, do you know that many cooks who really are experts on several different kinds of cuisine?
Well, I don't love that.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I would say, like, cook your culture a little bit. I hate, no disrespect to anybody who gets offended by me saying this, but whatever. If you're a white guy from Ontario, okay, cook that. Don't cook Chinese food. It's weird. Okay. It never comes off well. It never tastes right. There's something very flawed about it. Listen, unless you've spent 15 years in some village in China and that's all you know, then fine. But if, you're trained, you're a French trained cook, but you love, Japanese food, don't do it. Just don't cook Japanese food. It's going to look bad. Let the Japanese cook Japanese food. Okay. That's how I feel about that somewhat, right? Now, you can be trained in Italian food from the age of 16 and be a terrifically proficient white guy from Ontario cooking it, in your 30s and 40s. That's fine. There's some exceptions to that rule somewhat. Like, listen, I'm a white male from Quebec, right? And I excel at a weird type of French cooking, right? I don't even understand French cooking. I understand my French cooking that I do, la cuisine bourgeoise or la cuisine du marché. That's my area of expertise. That, and solely that, right? I don't understand high-end, multi-course, modern-based technique food. I have no interest in it whatsoever. But, I've devoted my life at cooking cuisine bourgeoise. So, that's that.
Well, I had that conversation with a chef called Mike Forgione, who, when I first reviewed him, he was in a French bistro, and I give him 1 star. And the next day I talked to him and I said, "You're Italian. You're as Italian as they come. Why aren't you making Italian food?" And actually, Juan at Alma said he was making Catalonian food before, and he didn't feel good about it, and he was ready to stop. And he went to Mexico, and he's like, "I'm Mexican. I should be making Mexican food." And now they're very successful. And I agree with you totally that people stick to what you know, because otherwise you're just making pretty generic French food. You can go work at L'Express and make food like that and everything. But if you have a chef-owned restaurant, that's what you should be doing.
Yeah. Somewhat. Yeah. I was happy that Juan, because I remember, it was weird at the beginning, it was like, I don't think that guy's Spanish. Like, I used to tell myself, like, in my head, in my secret conversation, pretty sure this tastes wrong. And I don't think that guy's Spanish, but I feel they're trying to be a Spanish restaurant, but I'm pretty sure that guy's Mexican. And, when he's amazing at Mexican food, right? So I think before that he was doing Italian food, right? Somewhere else. Right? He
was working with Mike Forgione at Gemma, making Italian food. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
I can't imagine poor Mike Forgione cooking anything else than Italian. That guy's like a walking Italian flag.
Yeah.
He should start dressing like that guy, that steak guy. the Chianti guy who's known for cooking bistecca alla Fiorentina.
Oh, Dario
Dario
Cicchini,
Cecchini.
right?
Yeah,
I think he knows him. I think they're friends.
yeah. He does know him.
Yeah, but just to go back to the wine, I think you're absolutely right about sticking to a region because everybody just goes all over the place, and unless you're a wine writer or some kind of master sommelier, that's a lot of ground to cover.
Yeah, it's okay to be an expert on Canadian wine. It's actually I love one of the things I love doing when my friends in the county. There's a cerebral understanding of the county, right? Like which vineyards are spectacular and which are who's working the best way, and there's an understanding of Hillier and other. It's super interesting, right? I love going to the county every couple of years and kind of tasting everything again, and I think that's a special wine region as well.
I also want to talk to you a little bit about Quebec City because I went back to Quebec City about a month ago, and it's going to sound so hokey, and I'm apologizing for the hokiness of this, but I totally fell in love with Quebec City all over again. And I have this love-hate relationship with Quebec City that I've gone there a lot over the years to eat in restaurants, and I've been to some amazing restaurants. But sometimes you go to Quebec City, and it's so bloody cold and grim, and it feels small and provincial. And then I'll go back and I'm like, oh my God, the architecture is so beautiful. This place is so great. The food's amazing. I went to two great restaurants, Le Clan in Quebec City, Stéphane Modaz's restaurant, which I heard very mixed reviews on, and I do not agree with. I thought it was very sharp restaurant. It is dark. A lot of people complain that it's dark. I agree it's dark, but New York City's pretty dark too in the restaurants. And I also went to an amazing restaurant called Melba, run by two young kids. I can't remember their names right now. I wrote about them on my Substack, but blown away. And just walking there, just looking at all these beautiful buildings. If anybody hasn't been to Quebec City, or if you don't like Quebec City, go back because it's a spectacular little city.
Did you stay at the Dominion Hotel?
I stayed at the Le Germain Hotel, which used to be called the Dominion, which is the first boutique hotel in Canada, I think.
I love that. I love that place.
Germain hotels are great, and they're a little pricey, but definitely worth it. And but you were born in Quebec City, weren't you?
Yeah, I was born in Quebec City, born and raised in Quebec City.
Do you go back often?
No. My favorite thing about Quebec City is the aquarium, first of all, right? It's right on the other side of the bridge. It's beautiful, and my grandfather used to take me all the time, and every time I go to Quebec City, I go to the aquarium. It's a good aquarium. Yeah, and I like the restaurants, and I love the architecture of the lower city and the upper city. And there's actually a place I've been aching to go back. It's called the Morin College. Morin College. It's like this old library, very old, one of the oldest, kind of beautiful libraries in Canada, and it's made by when people were a lot smaller. So a lot of the doors are smaller, the door jam, everything's small. It's just so strange. But they have the creepiest dungeon in the basement, and they tour you in it, right? It's the most claustrophobic thing I've ever seen. And then when you're in the dungeon, it gets worse. There's a sub dungeon. It's basically a hole in the ground with it's just the scariest thing. And I remember seeing that when I was a kid, and I think it haunts me every year. I think, oh my God, the Moray College, that dungeon. I can't believe that they put people in there. And I like doing those historical things in Quebec City. It's neat. The big museum is nice too.
I just think walking around the city, it's like a museum itself. And like you said, the small doors. But I think the thing that's really cool about Quebec City, unlike places like Soho in New York, is that so much of it hasn't been renovated. And when you're looking at the old buildings, you're like, that's the original glass.
Yeah.
And it's kind of run down, that building. There's nobody who's HGTV'd this place, It really is. And one thing I got to say in Quebec City, there are a lot of homeless people. There are a lot of homeless people in Montreal too. There are a lot of homeless people in Vancouver too. But it kind of hit me, a lot of young people in the streets of Quebec City. But
I don't remember that. I'll have to check. I'll keep my eye open.
Me too, from this last visit. But I just think they have great ingredients. They actually have even more of an ingredient-driven kind of cooking than I think there is in Montreal. I think they have more of dedicated to that kind of cooking. And they also have these small restaurants. There's another place called, I think it's called Quebec Social Club or something, 12 people eating at a counter. And it's a very exciting city. It doesn't let anybody down, I don't think, Quebec City.
No, it's a great place. The aquarium's amazing.
Yeah. Anything else? Have you been cooking anything fun this week?
No, it's too hot. That's too hot.
I know.
Yeah,
I know.
I've been eating
It's too
corn and
hot to cook.
watermelon and lemonade and no.
Maine food. That's the kind of food you get in Maine. The best thing people should do these days is make bread because it takes half the time because everything just rises so quickly. In fact, you have to put the bread dough in the fridge so it doesn't go crazy and rise like. But I'm totally with you. Even here in France, I'm like, no, thank you. I'm not even that hungry. But the thing is, in France, you're like, no, thank you, and then you sit down and you eat twice as much as you'd usually eat because everything is so good. And there's that whole thing about does everything taste better in France? Every time I come here, I'm like, does everything really taste better here in France? And you're like, yeah, it does taste better here.
It is.
It does. It does.
Way better.
It does.
Yeah.
Oh, it does. The tomatoes, the lettuce, the everything. Although I did have a funny thing happen to me yesterday in a restaurant is that we're in this restaurant and we had this gorgeous bread and I'm like, can we have some butter? And the waiter's like, well, here in France, we don't have butter with our bread. We only do that in the morning for breakfast. It is a bit of a jerk, to be honest. And I said, you guys have the best butter in the world. You should serve it all the time when you have bread. Like, just bring it out all the time. Kill him with kindness. But this kind of patronizing, oh, here in France, we don't do that. You're like, okay.
Yeah,
and then he charged me.
I don't respond well to that stuff.
He charged me €3 for the butter. Jesus. Anyway, always fun to come back to France. Anyway, so have a good week with your heat problems.
It is what it is, and I can't change it. So.
This could keep going into fall, right? This could be rough. We'll see what happens.
We need a bit of rain to happen, but whatever. Yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah, we'll go dance around the bonfire and chant and pray for rain. Anyway.
Enjoy France. Travel safe, and
I'm going to find a lake.
Find a lake
to jump in.
There must be great swimming holes around there.
There are. I kicked everybody out of the house. They're all swimming in a lake right now. I'm going to go find the lake full of people. All right. Take care.
Think Bait. TNKR Media. Good talk.